continue to collaborate with business, organized labor and the civil society to restore the confidence in the economy and address the structural constraints to economic growth. Working together, we can translate our plans into concrete actions to move the South African economy forward. On value-added tax, Cabinet welcomes the report by the Ministerial Panel of Experts, which reviewed the list of zero-rated VAT items and recommended the inclusion of white bread, bread flour, cake flour, sanitary products, and school uniforms. Cabinet encourages South Africans to voice their opinions on the report, which is open for public comment until the 31st of August 2018. The Minister of Finance, Mr. Nomvula, will then make an informed choice on which proposals to implement. Submissions can be made in writing to vetsubmissions@treasury.gov.za. On the Women's Month, Cabinet calls on all citizens to continue with the drive to ensure the safety and empowerment of women in our society. We commend all sectors of society for heading up initiatives aimed at fighting gender-based violence. As Women's Month draws to a close, Cabinet continues to honor women in the same spirit that we honor the women of 1956 who marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria in defiance of a brutal regime that sought to use discriminatory pass laws to undermine their dignity. Since the start of our democracy in 1994, great strides have been made to ensure that women enjoy the same rights as their male counterparts in education, employment, property, inheritance, and justice. In driving an inclusive economy, we are working hard to ensure the full participation of women in the economy and driving inclusive economy. As part of celebrating Women's Month, the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, in partnership with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform and Total South Africa, will on Thursday the 23rd, which is today, hold its 19th annual Female Entrepreneur Awards in East London in the Eastern Cape. Government, together with its partners, will also hold a National Gender Summit on the 31st of August 2018 to forge consensus on how best to deal with gender-based violence, but also to appreciate the journey that we have traveled thus far in dealing with gender-based violence and making sure that we create an environment that is safe and secure. On land expropriation, Cabinet thanks South Africans who participated in the parliamentary public hearings into the possible review of Section 25 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996 to allow for the expropriation of land without compensation. Parliament's Constitutional Review Committee has concluded hearings across the country. The deliberations on these, as well as written inputs, will now be considered by Parliament. Discussions on the issue of land ownership in South Africa is vital, and working together, we can ensure that land reform can further assist in growing our economy, particularly the agricultural sector, and address the land ownership inequalities in our country. President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed an interministerial committee chaired by Deputy President David Mabuza to coordinate and implement measures to accelerate the redistribution of land, the extension of security of tenure, the provision of agricultural support, and the redress of spatial inequality with a broad and comprehensive land redistribution and agricultural development program. On the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, Cabinet was briefed by the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Ms. Naledi Pandor, on the challenges facing the NSFAS. In order to stabilize and decisively address the challenges faced by the NSFAS in the disbursement of funds to deserving students, Cabinet supported the appointment of the Administrator, Dr. Randall Kerolizin. The appointment of Dr. Kerolizin effectively dissolves the current NSFAS board. The Administrator, together with the management, will work towards dealing decisively with backlogs and other challenges facing the entity so as to ensure student funding is administered optimally for 2019 and that all outstanding issues for 2017 and 2018 are resolved. On broadcasting, Cabinet welcomes the news that the SABC will screen the English Premier League games. Whilst this may be a revenue opportunity for the SABC, government hopes that the screening of these games will not sacrifice local sports and also worsen the financial position of the public broadcaster given its current liquidity challenges. Cabinet notes the invitation to apply for the licensing of spectrum for the provision of subscription broadcasting services by the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. While matters pertaining to licensing are the exclusive domain of the regulator, consistent with Section 192 of the Constitution, the licensing process should be done in a manner that does not destabilize the free-to-air platform during the transition from analog to digital or encourages uncompetitive behavior. It should ensure that the new licensees are able to compete fairly and openly. The following section is on Cabinet decisions. Cabinet approved the submission of the agreement establishing the Africa CFTA to Parliament for ratification. This agreement will result in access to new and dynamic markets in the rest of Africa, particularly new markets in West Africa and North Africa. On the study with regard to spectrum licensing, Cabinet approved the outcome of the Commission study by Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which sought to determine the amount of spectrum for open access and licensing to the industry. The study confirms that spectrum can be licensed to both wireless open access network as well as to industry. This will, amongst others, achieve national policy obligations, cost of communication, remove the entry barriers for the small, medium companies, and sustain current investments. The Minister of Telecommunication and Postal Services, Dr. Siyabonga Cwele, will hold a full media briefing to unpack this report. On progress with regard to the Northwest, Cabinet received the 4th progress report on the Section 101 intervention in the Northwest. Cabinet is satisfied with the implementation stage, with several milestones reached in terms of institutionalization of the project in the province. The Memorandum of Understanding between the national and provincial government has been signed from the Interministerial Task Team on the Northwest. 5 administrators for the departments placed under Section 101B have been appointed and formally installed as accounting officers. The protocols and directives between the respective national ministers and provincial MECs have been signed in line with Section 101B, and an overall coordinator for the management of the Northwest intervention has been appointed. Cabinet further expressed appreciation for the immediate intervention by the South African National Defence Force and the Municipal Infrastructure Support Agent to the sewage crisis in the Ditsobotla local municipality. The spillage of sewage, which had become a health hazard to the community, has been cleared. Cabinet commended the work that has been done to date by the administrators under the leadership of the Interministerial Task Team, chaired by Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. On Integrated Resource Plan, the IRP, Cabinet approved the publication of the updated Integrated Resource Plan for public input. The National Development Plan identifies the need for South Africa to invest in a strong network of economic infrastructure designed to support the country's medium and long-term economic and social objectives. Energy infrastructure is a critical component that underpins economic activity and growth across the country. It needs to be robust and extensive enough to meet industrial, commercial, and household needs. The finalization of the IRP will provide the necessary certainty to industry players as well as consumers insofar as security of electricity supply in the medium to long term is concerned. The Minister of Energy, Mr. Jeff Khateb, and the department will engage NEDLEC executive tomorrow on Friday, the 24th of August, on the draft report, which will also be published in the Government Gazette and the department's website by not later than Monday, the 27th of August 2018. On government communication policy, Cabinet approved the policy that will be applied across government. It sets norms and standards for government communication practitioners. On Cabinet, on the following strategies and white papers, Cabinet approved the air pollution in dense low-income communities of South Africa. Cabinet also approved the green transport strategy. Cabinet also approved the white paper on arts, culture and heritage of 2018. Cabinet has also approved the submission of the charter establishing the Southern African Development Community Aviation Safety Organization, SASO, to Parliament for approval. The charter provides a legal and institutional framework to establish SASO to assist SADC member states with their civil aviation safety oversight. It will also facilitate the development of efficient and effective civil aviation infrastructure in SADC member states. Cabinet approved the National Policy Framework on Underwater Cultural Heritage. This policy is underpinned by the principle that cultural heritage belongs to all people of South Africa. It identifies a range of stakeholders and actions to promote underwater cultural heritage and to create awareness of its significance and capacity building. Cabinet approved the 2018-2019 annual stamp program from the South African Post Office. The stamps reflect South Africa's diverse culture, national identity, history, rich heritage, heroes and heroines, the environment and socio-economic development. The stamps further serve as small ambassadors for South Africa as they travel across the world through the postal network. Cabinet approved the designs of the commemorative collector's coin series to be issued by the Mint Company in 2019. The following are the bills that were served before Cabinet. Cabinet approved the submission of the following bills to Parliament: the Electoral Laws Amendment Bill of 2018. This bill makes a number of amendments to tighten and adjust the Independent Electoral Commission's election processes. Some of the proposed changes provide that the IEC can use all available sources of data to obtain information necessary to compile and maintain the National Common Voters Roll. It also provides for the prohibition of the use of the name and its acronym, logo designs, or material used or owned by the IEC. The other bill that was served before Cabinet and approved is the Electronic Communications Amendment Bill. This bill amends the Electronic Communication Act of 2005, Act 36, to give effect to the National Integrated ICT Policy White Paper for the transformation of South Africa into an inclusive and innovative knowledge as well as a digital society. It also provides for the transformation of the sector through enforcement of the broad-based Black economic empowerment. On Military Discipline Bill of 2018, this bill addresses the administration of the military judicial system, creation and appointment of military police services, and disciplinary hearings. It will align SANDF military discipline to the United Nations one, especially on soldiers in peacekeeping missions. Cabinet approved the publication of the following bills for public comment: the Financial Matters Amendment Bill, the Insolvency Act of 1963, the Military Pensions Act of 1976, the Banks Act of 1990, the Government Employment Pension Law of 1996, the Auditing Profession Act of 2005, the Companies Bill of 2018 that will be published in the Government Gazette. This bill amends the Companies Act 2008, Act 71 of 2008. It reduces the regulatory and administrative burdens to business owners and enhances South Africa's attractiveness to potential investors. The following are the upcoming events. The South African Police Service National Commemoration Day. The South African Police Services National Commemoration Day will take place on the 2nd of September 2018, with commemoration activities commencing from the 31st August 2018. This is in memory of police officers and reservists who were killed in the line of duty and paid their highest price in service of the nation. Cabinet calls on all South Africans to recognize and celebrate the lives of these heroes and heroines who died in the line of duty. It also calls on all communities across the country to fly the flag at half-mast and to observe a moment of silence in all the religious ceremonies during the period of the 31st to the 2nd of September 2018 as a symbol of support to the South African Police Service. The next area is on messages. Cabinet joins His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa in expressing condolences to the family and friends of Umamu Zondeni Sobukwe, who was affectionately known as Mother of Azania. The President has declared a special official funeral category 2 for her. She was a heroine of resistance and a fighter for the freedom of all South Africans who continued her activism into our democratic dispensation. On the 28th of April 2018, and as an extension of Freedom Day celebrations, President Ramaphosa bestowed the National Order of Luthuli in silver on Mama Sobukwe. She was also the wife of Pan-Africanist Congress founding President Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. The year 2018 also marks the 40th anniversary of the death of Mr. Sobukwe. Mama Sobukwe will be laid to rest on Saturday at Kroonvale Cemetery in Graaf-Reinet. Cabinet also conveyed best wishes to the Muslim community in South Africa and around the world on the celebration of Eid al-Adha yesterday, Wednesday the 22nd August 2018. More than 2,500 Muslims from South Africa have traveled to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to join an estimated 2 million Muslims from around the world for the Hajj pilgrimage. Cabinet also joins His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa in expressing condolences to His Excellency Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, who was the first Black African to become the UN Secretary General. To the world-renowned singer and United States civil rights activist Aretha Franklin, to the Italian government and the people and the families of the victims following the collapse of the Morandi motorway bridge in the northwestern Italian city of Genoa, the people of India on the loss of lives during the recent floods and landslides in the state of Kerala, to the government and people of Sudan following the drowning of 24 school children in the Nile River, and to the world-renowned political economist and African academic Samir Amin, who passed away on the 12th of August at the age of 86. On the appointments approved by Cabinet, all the appointments are subject to the verification of qualifications and the relevant clearance. Ms. Deshni Subia, as Director to the Board of the Export Credit Insurance Corporation of South Africa, Ms. Tezi Rosemary Mabuza, reappointed as Deputy Commissioner of the National Consumer Commission, 2 non-executive directors to the Land and Agricultural Development Board of Directors, 7 non-executive directors to the Board of the Airports Company South Africa, 5 non-executive members of the Board of the South African National Roads Agency Limited, 16 members to the National Advisory Council on Innovation, 15 members to the South African National Space Agency, and 13 members to the National Research Foundation. That is what Cabinet deliberated on yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Can we start in Pretoria with questions?
We don't have a question at this stage.
Okay. Right, how do I start? Let me start at the back. You, yeah.
Jan Carver, Houston Report. Good morning, Minister. I would like to get some comments on the government side. President Trump's speech this morning. Basically, all of the factual piece, and he's also saying he's going to give the Secretary of State instructions to look into land expropriation in South Africa and the killing of white farmers, etc. And also, in relation to that, is the concern that the US haven't appointed a full-time ambassador to South Africa, and is a goer out of bed.
Thank you. I think, yeah, Marianne, and then.
Marianne Merton, Daily Maverick. Follow up on the Media 24 question. What is government's position, particularly from the Ministry of Communications side, that South Africa somehow finds itself caught up in right-wing politicking overseas in the US with all this alt-right and also the US, the European right-wing political machinations? Is there something that from Communications Ministry you would like to address on that score? Is there something that can be done? And your comments just generally also, how is it South Africa finds itself caught up in this? Thank you.
Okay. I think it's you.
Thank you, Leslie. Similar questions. Just what has South Africa done in terms of its diplomatic missions to countries, particularly countries in which groups like AfriForum have South Africa's representatives there, gone to speak to governments? And if not South Africa's ambassadors, what about institutions like Brand SA? What have they been doing to counter that narrative?
Thank you. Yan, and then it will be Paul after Yan.
Yeah, yes, just to add to the list, also the decision on the motion passed by the state legislature of New South Wales in the same vein. Thank you.
Paul, and then it's you.
Minister Paul Bekjata from Bloomberg. Will South Africa's international relations and cooperation minister be something the acting US ambassador to explain South Africa's position and ask for an explanation of the American president's tweet? Thank you.
This thing's not working. Minister Joseph Musia from SABC.
Because those mics are on.
Oh, God. Sorry. You think so?
Oh, okay. Mine's still not working.
Okay.
Okay. My question is slightly gonna move from that one to NSFAS. What was identified as a problem at NSFAS that led to the board being dissolved and being replaced by an administrator? What is the main issue there? And then, Minister, if you can, just for my ignorant self, what is underwater cultural heritage?
Okay. Welcome.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Minister. I think that's all the hands that have taken.
There's a hand.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Minister Bobalo here from Eyewitness News. Just on land expropriation, the preliminary report for from the hearings that was presented before the Joint Review Committee, about 60% of the submissions are opposed to an amendment to the Constitution. 40% are in favor of it. It's still preliminary, but there is a trend. Is this not an issue at all as far as numbers are concerned? I know the ANC and the president wants land expropriation to happen, but now the submissions, are speaking a kind of a different kind of a story. It's not a referendum, that's pretty clear. Will these numbers mean anything at all when it gets to that point?
Okay. I think that's all. Am I missing one hand or any? I think that's it. Oh, Tabo? Yeah, I'll take another round.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't want to sound cynical, but Mr. Trump tweeted when we are done with cabinet. But yes, but that's a fact. Secondly, that we view the issues on land as very important matters related to the future of this country, both for economic growth, for transformation, for reconciliation, and for the restoration of the dignity of all South Africans. And we also take cognizance that no self-respecting nation would want to continue to have things remaining as they are in our country, and hence Section 25 of the Constitution from the time when we were negotiating for a better South Africa. And in the quest to realize that equality, in the quest to grow the economy, there has been realization over the last 24 years that there are challenges, and as articulated by the President yesterday in his response to questions in Parliament, the pace at which we are at in making sure that we deal with issues of land do require the change of gear. And it is precisely because of that we do believe that there has to be a better and a faster method that would deal with issues related to expropriation of land without compensation, that would then help us to grow the agricultural sector and make it to be much more inclusive, but to also make sure that it is the majority of South Africans, like in any other self-respecting nation, who are the primary owners of the land. And in this instance, it should not be at the disadvantage of those who have been historically disadvantaged. And thirdly, it should not only be around issues of agriculture, but it must also be about changing our own human settlement patterns and property relations in South Africa. And it is on those bases that even with the agreements and the treaties that were involved in, such as ALGOA, we do not believe that they can be threatened. Because in fact, they should seek to strengthen our relationships, because we would then be able to bring in your small-scale farmers, would be able to bring your black farmers who, for now, have got challenges with access to markets, access to finances, and hence our issue on land goes also with the issues that have to do with agriculture farmer support programs, so that then those who have access to land for agriculture are able also to be involved in food security as well as into growing the economy by strengthening this very critical sector and even going beyond the current methods of farming in our own country. So this should not be a threat to ALGOA. In fact, it should actually it should massify the presence and the footprints of South Africans into the trade relations that we have with regard to agriculture. The other issue around the right wing and stuff, and that goes also with the resolution of the legislature, we do believe that our international relations, brand South Africa, trade and industry, including agriculture, we have a responsibility to communicate with the world not through third parties, but through ourselves. And it is on those bases that the President has set up an interministerial committee. We will be giving the necessary support. Brand SA has been doing a lot of work in Australia now. It has also been doing some work in the UK, and we are also sending information to our different missions. We are in discussions with the Minister of International Relations to make sure that there is constant briefing, not only to our foreign missions, but to ambassadors who are here in South Africa representing their own countries, so that they then have a better understanding and an appreciation that we have a responsible government and we have a good intention for the prosperity of South Africa and a better world by dealing with this matter in this fashion. We are much concerned about, of course, what is being perceived. I mean, unfortunately, and I hope I'm not going beyond the diplomatic lines. One of the things I know it will be difficult for me to be a diplomat, that it's unfortunate that a first citizen of the US can actually say we have amended the Constitution. Just that. But I leave that to his counterparts, and the South African methods of communicating with South Africa will generate the information. We also are quite concerned about South Africans who are supposed to be patriots, who then are using their own connections to raise these particular issues, but were quite heartened, were very humbled, and were quite elated by the fact that Agri-SA, for example, just had a meeting a few days ago with the President to deal with these issues, to get reassurance, and in fact they have confirmed that they will want to be the change for a better South Africa. And many of them are already working with government through the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. Here in the Western Cape, in the Free State, already work is underway. So yes, because we are a nation, a country in transition, we do know that there will be those who will be given a platform, but we refuse that South Africa should be compared to any other country. Our situation and how we manage our issues can never actually undermine, firstly, the rights of South Africans, the need to change South Africa for the better, but also for the world to appreciate our own domestic challenges and get it from us. We've got a democratically elected government. We work on the basis of multi-party democracy. We've got a parliament that is championing these consultative processes. And finally, when a decision is made, it will be made in the interest of South Africa, but also in the interest of those who seek to come and invest in our country. And hence, even the preliminary report that has been presented by the committee led by Mr. Vincent Smith, we take it as a preliminary report. It's not a report that finalizes everything that has been presented. And once all those processes are done and completed, the matter will be brought before Parliament. And I want to assume that we can't all be responding on the basis of what we are told is a preliminary report. It's not conclusive. And besides the submissions, there were also those oral hearings that were done in the various areas where people could not actually send an email or actually make a formal submission through lawyers and legal practitioners. Because one of the things about this land issue and what is happening, it affirms the inequalities of our country, that we still are a nation of more than one nation. We are a nation where people will come onto the hearings and their main issue will be about presenting their life experience during the hearings. And you have others who will then have a written submission based on their own intentions, either to protect or to provide an alternative. And if we really have to deal with such a delicate matter, we must also listen to the voice of the disenfranchised, who are not on Twitter, who can't get through internet, who can't actually read and write, but can speak for themselves. And therefore, that's why we are not worried, but we appreciate the extent to which South Africans have actually responded to this particular matter. What is it, Leslie, you've asked that we are doing? As I've said, Brandes A has been doing work, but we need to intensify it, because we can see that the onslaught is being intensified. We will also be convening here at home, DERCO, Communication, Land and Rural Reform, the Deputy President's Office, ourselves, Brandes A, DTI, because it has trade missions, for all of us to begin to say, how do we tell the world about this good intention of South Africa? How do we share with the world what we seek to do on this particular matter? Yes, it's not the first time the legislature, we've also seen some of the things that have happened in Australia, and we're able to interact, and hence the Minister of International Relations was able to communicate with her counterpart. So we are doing our bit to communicate through GCIS, but also to coordinate through Brandes A and our trade missions, as well as foreign embassies on this matter. Nobody is yet calling for anyone to come back home and explain. I think it's a matter we can handle. I'm sure there'll be another tweet before the end of the day today. So we are fine. We are fine, because what we want to stick to is to be consistent on what we want to sort out domestically. And we will use the appropriate platforms to engage with the world. And we are quite satisfied that we've got the ability, we've got the capacity as South Africa to share with the world, whilst noting, of course, globally, the emergence of right-wing politics is not just only around this issue of land in South Africa. We have seen also around the issues of migration, how right-wing politics have emerged. And I'm sure those who are interested to also get more information on the political side, we have seen how the change in the politics and the dominance of right-wing political parties in Europe has actually emerged. And it's those things that we need to look at this matter on land within that particular context. And it is, of course, a concern when this tempers with our own national interests. Because that is what is quite important. We're trying to clear ourselves, because we are still a nation under construction. We are as yet to be a nation. And land becomes a critical game changer in making South Africa a country of one nation. The NSFAS. Minister Pandor briefed Cabinet on the issues related to NSFAS and its administration and the delays, including the backlog that is related to the payments of student fees. And upon that concern that she observed, she has engaged with the different bodies of management in the sector, and hence we saw in some instances the resignations that followed after the resignation of Mr. Sizwe Nxasana. And it is on those bases that Cabinet supported her suggestion that let's rather put an administrator and make sure that all those matters are resolved and we do not actually deal with issues piecemeal. And we're quite confident that through this intervention and the coordination and collaboration that will happen not only with the university management but also with the students, we will be able to find a better solution in this particular impasse. What is water heritage? It's all those resources and material that you find in your own in our own coast that belong to South Africa and that are assets of the country that have to be protected so that then you don't actually lose your ownership, just like it happens with your birds, just like it happens with the rhino horn and all those kind of things. Protection of everything that is of your own national significance that is under the water. The issue around, oh yes, I've responded on the issue of the constitutional review. Yes, I think those were the questions that were asked. Predominantly, they were on the issues of land and the tweet by Mr. Trump.
Okay, just. Is it a new question or
It's
something
a
that?
question, it's a point of clarity.
Okay.
You made an allusion towards the end, as you were explaining about Trump's tweet, that the notion of tampering with a nation under construction, the notion of sovereignty. So if I can just, if you can just then say, was Trump's tweet irresponsible in the sense that it could heighten, irresponsible for a lack of a better word? I mean, you can use whatever word you want to.
Read my lips.
In terms of South Africa being a nation under construction, it could inflame friction around a domestic policy. I mean, is the notion of the sovereignty of and the domestic policy of South Africa is there sort of like an executive overreach on his side?
Okay.
Okay, let's take the one last round, and then Minister will also touch on your clarification.
Yep.
Can we get Pretoria? It's your last round. You don't have to ask if there's nothing.
There's nothing.
Okay, thank you. My goodness, yeah, Minister, you're gonna go. Okay, let me start in front this time around. Let's start with SABC, and then it's you. Yeah.
Actually, I'll pass.
Oh, you'll pass. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
It's Gail Davis from Eyewitness News, just to follow up on my colleague Wendell Rule. The tweet from the President referred to large-scale killings of farmers and seizure of land. My understanding is that it was the Fox News that broadcaster who referred to the Constitution already having been amended, just for the sake of clarity there, that it's, unless you have information that Donald Trump himself said that the Constitution had been changed.
I'll come back.
As the first citizen. Thank you. In terms of dealing with the fallout from this disinformation from the first citizen of the United States, and in terms of dealing generally with the disinformation, if you like, or I'll leave it at that arises from a process as complicated and as nuanced as the land reform transition process is. Would you say that the government is acting proactively in terms of its communications campaigning here and abroad, particularly abroad, or is this a reactive, oh my goodness, the Australians, now we better go and send Brand SA in there to try and get the narrative back on track? How much thought has gone into government's communications around this in terms of dealing with things like this? Thank you.
Yania?
Leaving Mr. Trump aside for a moment and returning to domestic issues, Minister, rising from your reply earlier, do you think there's a tendency from yourself, from government, from the ANC perhaps, to attach greater weight to the inputs at the public participation process, which were done orally, than were done in a written way?
Thank you.
Minister, it appears that President Trump's weapon of choice is tariffs. And is the concern that South Africa could embark in a tariff war with the US and also connected to AGOA? Secondly, it also has real-world implications. The devaluing of the lira was a direct result of a tweet by the Turkish lira was a result of a tweet by President Trump. It then had real-world implications on South African currency. What mechanisms can South Africa do to protect itself, or isolate itself? And a separate matter, it's a question on football. So SABC will now be broadcasting English Premier League games, but there's still no clarity on Bafana games, and you as Minister of Communication could answer this. Is it not a concern that that has the most watched sport by the majority of poor South Africans on the public broadcaster? It's a question of 90% local everything, but 0% local football. What's your concerns as the Communication Minister?
Okay. Yes. Yes. No. Yes, it's you.
Thank you, Tsulegani. Just a question on, at the very beginning of the briefing, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that Cabinet agreed on one of the economic strengths of the country being the independence of a central bank. I wanted to find out to what extent would you believe or imagine Cabinet would agree or disagree to the possibility that what was recently presented by the economic freedom fighters in Parliament could affect that, especially given the fact that it rings familiar to something that African National Congress wanted to do in Parliament but made an about turn on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then Thabo.
Thank you. Minister, my name is Nomvula Mokonyane. I work for the Sunday Times. The changes to government communications policy and how government communicators, fulfill their functions. What warrants the change? What's the rationale? What is it that they are doing wrong? As far as you are concerned, it seems that you are changing the policy. What really have they done wrong to warrant this change in policy? Thank you.
Or what is it that they've done right to consolidate?
You are the last one.
My name is Tubasa from the SABC. Minister, maybe just to ask this question on land differently, because the obsession is with right-wingers and the conservatives and the agri-SA and all that. But the people in the Western Cape will tell you that since the president started making these announcements of expropriation without compensation, there's been more than 130 land invasions in the Western Cape. And in all that, there's not a single crop that has been plowed. As you are saying that this is aimed for agriculture and food security and so on. But it hits the black middle class. I can take you just to a village not very far from here, where people can't even sell their houses because people have invaded land and put shacks, not crops, all over their houses. They have bonds. They are paying bonds. A friend of mine was saying he can't even rent it, let alone selling it. It's a black middle class. It's not people, the agriculture, the agri-SA has not been, there's not even a single land that has been invaded of agri-SA. They still have their farms intact. It's a black middle class that is suffering. There are shacks all over their bonded houses. The values of their houses have depreciated. Now, on the basis of that, Minister, with all your good intentions for your competition with EFF, would you say that in hindsight, didn't you do this thing recklessly at best, or at worst, stupidly? Because it's the black middle class that is suffering right now as we speak. It's not Donald Trump, it's not agri-SA, there's not even a single farm that has been invaded. It's the land around the bonded houses of the black middle class. In hindsight, don't you think this thing was held recklessly or stupidly?
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. That's over to you, Minister. I think it's the last round, colleagues. Oh, what? No, I'm not coming out, okay. All right.
Sorry, Minister, can I?
Now you remembered.
Yes.
What?
Can I please ask this? Now that Melissa has asked that question, maybe I can come with mine, because the issue is there any report in government that shows that the land reform that was being embarked on before this ANC decision, is there any report that shows in government that that policy actually has failed, that was being pursued by government, and hence the adoption of this new policy? I would just like to tease that. Maybe there is, and I don't know about.
Okay. Minister is generous today.
Minister, yesterday the President during his question answers session tacitly inferred that the question wasn't that South Africa needs to change the constitution to expropriate land, but someone got the inference that the President said that there's been a lack of political will to do so. I know you can't speak directly for the President, but in your opinion, do you think that there has or has not been political will to expedite land reform over the last 24 years?
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you once more. The tweet has not determined our approach to the United States on our current relationships and future relationships. We do believe that once there are these kind of concerns, surely there should be the relevant channels of communication that should have actually been used. And it is on those bases that up until we are able, through our diplomatic channels, being able to get exactly the reason behind. And of course, one of the things was, it was in response to what Fox TV said. That's what was said. And I'm sure for any self-respecting nation, you would want to verify and get facts and so forth. And that's the issue that through international relations, we will have to continue clarifying, and we have continued to raise these matters. Of importance is that our foreign missions on any issue that is a concluded policy or processes that are underway to deal with policy in government, they are forever on board through the Department of International Relations. But also Brand SA then looks at investments and look at informing communities where we have the footprint, as well as reaching out beyond what government is able to do. And it is that we normally have. And as I have indicated with the Australian one, there has been sessions, there has been workshops, championed and led by Brand SA, working together with our embassies there. There's been a lot of work happening in other countries, because I think whilst we have this concern about the tweet and the resolution of the legislature, many nations have actually afforded South Africa the space to resolve this matter and keep them updated based on our own relationships that we have together with them. So these fallouts, of course, for now, we've not fallen out with anyone. What we seek to do is to make sure that everybody understands what is the intention of the South African people, led, of course, by the South African government. There must be a balance. In a nation of inequalities, there must be a balance, there must be consideration. The fact that there were hearings and people were made to queue behind a mic, those should be taken as part of the submissions, precisely because of our different levels of development and access to information and dissemination of information. So it's not about comparing. It must be a combination of both, because those that the South African government and all of us should be worried about are the ones who we had to go to. So if that input is not going to be taken on board, what was the purpose? So it is those things that we continue to say, yes, we know the written submissions, we know, and it's not conclusive, it was a preliminary report, and we will also be awaiting Parliament to give us a summary of, not a summary, a conclusion of what came out of the hearings as people were making their own oral submissions. I do believe that nothing makes one to be more weightier than the other. They must be treated the same. The tariff for the issues of Turkey, yes, that's why we reflected also on our state of economy that we are already casualties of that with the fuel price and many other things, and hence our continuous intention to engage as well as to reposition ourselves as a nation and build new relationships and create new investment opportunities here in the country, but also taking South Africa both to Africa and to the world. The issue about the English Premier League, the SABC has taken advantage of this because they will not be doing any content production. In fact, it is a means of generating revenue. They are generating revenue by doing this. What is of importance is that even with other relationships that we have, particularly with SAFA and others, we need to even go to the regulator, because it's not only the 18 codes that the regulator has identified, and of course, with soccer being there, we need to make sure that those contracts do not put more responsibility on the SABC to an extent where it becomes a financial liability for the South African Broadcasting Corporation, because that's what has been a challenge for now. I've not had anyone complaining on behalf of Banyana Banyana. Strange. And I think it is those things that we must remind everybody to say, why is it that case? Amongst other things is because Banyana Banyana has no sponsors who are very vocal and who will be able to have a commercial benefit when Banyana Banyana is televised. So we need to deal with those things. Even the transformation of how sponsorship is done to undermine other sectors. There's a young woman from South Africa who went without any personal assistance or any funding support to go and play in Wimbledon. Nobody knows where she's training and what she's doing and so forth. It's those things that we definitely have to deal with, the sports rights in South Africa. We need to come back, look at them in their totality, and say how best do we make sure that we even have access to development sport. We should be having access to development sport. And my take is that as we have the review of the broadcasting policy, these are the things that we must deal with. There has been hearings with ICASA around the sports rights, and amongst other things, the issues of gender parity can't just be about the NC only having 50% of its leadership being women, and the whole country then speaks a lot about it but does nothing. We must all take responsibility, including on these broadcasting rights, and our cry for soccer. If it is for soccer, it must be soccer for even Banyana Banyana, including the development sport. And sport, and not only confine ourselves to what? To soccer. Netball must also feature there, so that then we are able to demonstrate. There are provinces that would prefer to have broadcast on rugby because of the dominance and the preference in that space. And therefore the release of the spectrum, digital migration, must create many platforms so that South Africans can diversify. So on the English Premier League, it's a revenue enhancement for SABC. It's less costly compared to our own local, where SABC has to spend money to produce the content. In this one, all that SABC is doing is plugging, and it is being given an opportunity to generate revenue from those that have got access to the English Premier League. And it's good that one has an opportunity to raise this on Women's Day. Well, let's fight on all fronts the issues about inequality. Banyana Banyana must be favored. those who invest on things that favor women, they must also do that. Even government and the SABC must also have quotas and say we're going to broadcast those that focus on women in the interest of creating an equal and a just society. The Reserve Bank, yes, Cabinet asserted that, whilst acknowledging, of course, that there are discussions taking place. Because even the deliberations around the Reserve Bank, it must be done in a manner that does not undermine the good intentions of a Reserve Bank, but ownership becomes important. And ownership does not actually exclude independence. So the independence must remain. The issues around ownership can then be the modalities that we all engage on and say, what do we mean about ownership? Thabo, you asked what is the rationale. We need to have one voice but many messages. One message but many voices. We need to also make sure that we coordinate and you maximize the capacity that exists in government, both for advertising, for production, but also for packaging our messages, so that then you do not have 7 uncoordinated messages that come from government in a day that do not actually enhance the voice of government to be heard. Secondly, we need to make sure that every department commits itself in the realization of the outcomes of the National Development Plan, even in the kind of activities we get involved in. If, for instance, for now, there is a major issue like the matter of land reform and its impact on international relations, it can't be the minister who's the Minister of Communication and the President who must get their we shouldn't be writing a letter. It must be a given that each and every department, each and every communicator in government must be able to link this matter to any of our own deliberations, so that for now, people don't continue doing what they like and not focus on what is to be done and the task at hand. So that's what we are trying to really do, so that then we maximize. There's a lot that government is doing, and there's a lot that South Africans and the world is yearning to get from government, but we are so fragmented, and then we become poor in communication, and then other people communicate on our behalf. We're actually meeting, I think, today. Cabinet approved yesterday. We're pulling these things together starting from today, precisely to help the nation and yourselves to find a coherent message that comes from government. And what has failed was that we're not coherent on many issues, and one person there, the other person there, and minimum impact. Say on gender-based violence, we as a nation should be saying we've broken the silence. If you compare the situation between today and 25 years ago, we've been able to break the silence. We now have policies, we now have programs that deal with prevention. Yes, they may be weak, but we do need to focus on them. What are those that can help on rehabilitation, on integration back to society? We need to integrate that kind of messaging and picking up the gaps and talk in one voice. And this has, the issue on land has been also a stark exposure of our inability to communicate in a solid voice. The same as the issues related to gender-based violence. Is there any report that indicates the failures? Yes, the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform did make an audit, and there is a report that is available through Rural Development, but I'm sure, again, GCIS has a responsibility to ensure that that information is disseminated so that people understand the problem statement, and I appreciate that. I think that's what we must be. What is the problem statement? What has worked and what has not worked? There is that kind of information. And the pace at which what has worked been able to deliver what is expected, would be important that we deal with it. The matter that you raise, Manelisi, around land, there is nowhere where government said people must invade land. In fact, part of what we need to do is to make sure that where there is violation of the existing laws, including bylaws, the relevant authorities must act. The relevant authorities must act so that then it does not happen at the disadvantage of those that seek to find a correct solution. So there is nothing stupid about what we have done. There is nothing bad about what we have done. What is a challenge in South Africa is that we have those that seek to take shortcut solutions, populists who go on and do these things. At no point has government actually directed people to invade, as well as that there is no situation where government has encouraged people to evict. And where there are these things, law enforcement must kick in and must condemn in no uncertain term any form of land invasion, because land invasion is not part of the solutions we've spoken about. We've not emphasized, we've not even pronounced on it. So we need to expose those that are behind these matters, the same as those that are lying about the issues of killing of farmers and all those things. The negativity that is clouding this noble intention of building a nation. And whether it's black middle class or whoever, nobody must actually be targeted in the guise of what we seek to do. There isn't yet any implementation, yet we have seen these things happening, and there's been certainty that we will never do things in an irresponsible manner. And I would love to get more information so that we engage with the government of the Western Cape and the relevant municipalities as well as the law enforcement agencies to make sure that where these things do occur, we are able to deal with them. It's not in our program. I think we all know we're talking about consideration of the amendment of the Constitution. We're talking about food security. We're talking about the issues that have to do with the farmer support program. We're talking about integrated urban development. We're talking about inclusion of women and young people in agro-processing, access to markets, diversification of crops, because again, we need to change the manner in which we produce and what we produce as a nation. At no stage will a self-respecting government, and where we are ourselves, will ever encourage any form of land invasion or any form of eviction of farm workers in whatever province. And that's the position. It is not government's program. The law enforcement must kick in, and those that are known to be behind this must be exposed, and they must face the consequences thereof. Thanks, Pumla.
Thank you very much, Minister. We've come to the end of the briefing. See you in 2 weeks' time. Yes, I think they're sending it out.
I just want to be clear, because you say it's unfortunate that the first citizen of the US can say that the Constitution has been changed, but he didn't do that.
I'm saying, let me show you the tweet. They're saying he got it, he reacted on the basis of the tweet.